Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Anna Richardson, and I'm here today with my co-hosts Barb Schank and Carrie Frank, two nutrition directors from Waconia and Dover-Eyota school districts, respectively. I'm the programs director at the Good Acre, a food hub in the Twin Cities focused on supporting farm-to-school efforts in Minnesota in a variety of ways. And we're thrilled that you've joined us today for this Farm-to-School Food Forum to highlight some of the really great work being done around Minnesota by many of you to serve kids and families great locally sourced food. While we'd love to hear from all of you, but thanks to our great turnout, we don't have time for spoken introductions. So we'll do a little icebreaker in the chat today if you're up for it. So let us know where you're joining us from by typing the name of your school district or town or city in the chat box. So I'd be like, Anna, Minneapolis. Then we can kind of know who's here. One housekeeping note, my colleague who I mentioned, Nikki Warner, is our meeting tech support today. So if you're having trouble with Zoom at any time throughout the event, feel free to reach out to her in the chat for help. Nikki Warner is her name. If your audio is weird or you're not seeing the screen or anything, she can hopefully help you troubleshoot. So you're here because you work on the ground or you support the people who are working on the ground to serve students, and in some of your cases, whole communities, nutritious meals every day. And I don't have to tell you that we're living through a time like no other that's caused significant disruptions in the way many of you operate. And that's why we're here today, to celebrate the fact that you're still here, showing up in a big way for kids, their families, and farmers in Minnesota. And I'm so excited for you to hear in a moment from 4 directors doing amazing work in different parts of the state. After we hear from them, you'll have time to talk with one another. I'm just gonna put our agenda up here. You'll have time to talk with one another about what you've learned through this time and to share more about the challenges and opportunities your food service program is facing. We'll have some breakout rooms after we hear from our 4 speakers. I also want to identify 2 very special guests joining us today. We have Commissioner of Education, Mary Catherine Ricker, and Assistant Commissioner of Agriculture, Patrice Bailey, here with us. The commissioners are here with us because they see the value of farm to school, both for students' education and for the agricultural producers of Minnesota. So thanks to you both so much for being here. We'll all get to hear from them a little bit later. So you can see our agenda on the screen now, and I'll kind of be popping in and out throughout the event to help us transition from one section to the next. So for now, I'm going to turn it over to Barb and Carrie to say a quick welcome before we get started. So feel free to unmute yourselves, Barb and Carrie, and take over.
All right, I'm Barb Schank, and I'm the Food Service Director at the Waconia Public Schools. I'm also the current SNDM Chair, and I just wanted to welcome you here today. Thank you for joining us. And of course, not much more can be said about the madness that we're experiencing right now, except that I would like to challenge all of you to project yourself and your teams forward to this time next year. We're kind of muddling in the things that we're in, and I just really want us to think about getting beyond this and challenge you to think about what you can do now that could potentially influence your next school year. Recently, I've challenged my teams to take this time to more closely reflect on our mission, which is, of course, to serve great food to kids who are growing, learning, exploring, and also to increase our efforts to source more raw ingredients locally and then to create signature menu items. So far, we've ramped up our local purchases with great support from Agri Grants. It's helped us purchase more local products and help us to fulfill a new dream concept to source whole local beef to create a variety of entrees. So welcome today, and I hope that you guys find some fun ideas and are challenged to think about next year at this time.
Thank you, Barb. Welcome. I'm Carrie Frank, Dover Food and Nutrition Director for Dover-Eyota Public Schools and President-elect for the Minnesota School Nutrition Association. I'd like to welcome you all. As Barb said, this is very trying times, and farm to school is a lot like the weather. It changes. Some years you're doing a lot, and other years not so much. Some of the factors can be egg teachers. One has a passion, the other doesn't. And I just encourage everyone not to be discouraged during those low times. Moving forward, we have strengthened our farm to school program by purchasing more locally sourced directly in Eyota And so the families go to the district, and so we get our produce and our meat. And as I said, the kids go to the school district, they think they're rock stars. And I just encourage everyone to be, persistent. Don't get discouraged.
I love it. Thanks for the welcome, Barb and Carrie. And don't worry all, you'll get to hear more about both of their programs in a little while. So I'm gonna stop my screen share here. And we're gonna dive in. So our first two speakers are Janeen Peterson and Carrie Frank, who you just heard from. Janeen is the Director of Food and Nutrition at Alexandria Public Schools. And Carrie is just like she said, Food and Nutrition Director at Dover-Eyota Schools and President-elect of MSNA. So they're gonna share with us how they've found some farm to school success in their respective programs recently. I realize some questions might arise as these two and the other two speakers are going. And if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box. And if we have time, we'll answer a couple of them when all four speakers are finished. If we don't have time today, or if your questions don't get answered, I'll do my best to kind of record those and direct them to the right person and get an answer to you after the event. So we'll start with Janeen. So Janeen, feel free to unmute yourself. And then Carrie, I won't pop in between Janeen and you, but you can feel free to take over when Janeen is done. And Nikki will chat you too when you've got about a minute left of your time.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm going to try to not make any IT mistakes here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. I feel really honored to be speaking with some of these people today because our program, in fact, I was a little caught off guard when I got a call, but our program is maybe not as robust as some of the speakers you'll be hearing from, but I'll tell you, coming from the metro area and now going to a more rural area, I think my first surprise was how much harder farm to school was. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in the middle of farms. What's the deal? But things like food hubs, like the Good Acre, they really make it easy. And the distribution piece is a little tough out here in the sticks. So it's a challenge for sure. And so is technology, which I'm having trouble sharing my screen. Hang on one second. Maybe I will be able to get it.
There it is.
Are you seeing it?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I had it pulled up and now it's gone. So let me just quick pull up
In there.
I'm hoping that a picture is worth 1,000 words for you. So, and now my face is right where I would put present. Okay, here we go. All right, farm to school. So this is our program here in Alexandria. Present. There we go. Okay, well, while it is loading, I'm going to burn all my time just trying to get this thing loaded. So I'm going to talk quick. Here's our current farmers that we partner with in Alexandria. We have Country Blossom Farm, which is a pretty established farm. They have a lot of the community come in to pick apples, and they've branched out and have done some creative crops, even Brussels sprouts, which actually didn't turn out, but we tried it. So anyways, they're a great partner. We also still do Ferndale Farms Market. And I'm going to talk about challenges, but I'll just say it right now, distribution is a challenge. So to bring up, to partner with a farmer that's that far away, still local in Minnesota, of course, can be difficult when you're more rural. But we've worked through that, and we have case minimum, or we have to order whole pallets at a time. So we work our way around it. We also partner with Lodemeyer Honeybees Farm. We do honey with them on occasion, not all year long, but here and there, just to expose the kids and do some pollinator education, which, by the way, a really nice twist with COVID. The blessings with COVID is, I don't know if any of you, most of you are probably doing meals in the classroom. Well, you now have a really captive audience to be able to go beyond just having them taste something. There's some dedicated time there where they get to learn about something if the teacher or pair or whoever is in there with them during their lunch hour. So we're taking advantage of that. We also partner with Rocky Ridge Farms in Alexandria for different things like squash, beets, let's see, do potatoes, onions, and we're also adding hopefully Ida Way Farm, which is a farmer right here in Alexandria. You know, again, I'm not telling you anything new probably, but I'm just sharing with you how we've marketed our program. One thing that's really important, especially with farm to school, because it's not always the cheapest route. We know that. We want to make sure that our community knows how much we value our local farmers. So we put a lot of efforts into marketing our program. This year we didn't get to do it, but we always have a annual parade in our town, and we do a farm to school float. So we have that. That picture at the bottom is me in a strawberry costume. So sometimes you have to be shameless and look like a goofball, but it's fun, and you get out there and you have kids taste local produce from farmers, and you know, whatever, put a costume on. Do a lot of Try It Tuesday events, and that's where we get to highlight a lot of our local produce. We also did a junior Iron Chef contest, which we were supposed to do again this year. It was such a huge success. It was fabulous. Not because of me, it was because of all the people involved. It was crazy. But we highlighted local foods, and those were we had 2 key ingredients, squash and turkey, and every team had to use those 2 items in their dish. So it ended up really cool. We had some great chefs. We really value training for the challenge of farm to school. It's the way we get buy-in from our staff. So we've partnered with Good Acre several times on having them come in. And you know what? I can't see my timer, so somebody's just gonna have to give me the hook if I'm talking too long, okay?
You'll pop in and let you know.
Okay, thank you. So we've had Good Acre come all the way to Alexandria. Oh, fabulous job that they've done, and just teaching us how to do different roasting techniques, cutting techniques, just talking with our staff, and it made a difference. Our staff had a lot more buy-in on going the extra mile with farm to school produce. They valued that we invested in them time and energy. One thing that I had to tell myself that I learned, I came from Egan originally, big school district, and then went to Prior Lake, and now I'm in Alex. And I used to think that, well, if you can't do it for the whole district, don't do it at all. And it's just not true. There's a lot of times you're not going to have enough for the whole district. I'm finding that in Alexandria, when you approach farmers, their eyes get really big, like, you want how many? And I've learned that if I can just get a couple classes or a couple schools enough, and share the love, spread it around, but just do it for that class or do it for that school, and maybe you don't get the whole school district. That's okay. Next time you'll get them with the next thing. And so we've done cooking classes with kids, and just different tasting events at different schools. Just some lessons learned. I'm going to share some funny stories with you that might be unique to a smaller school district. I don't know, maybe some of you can relate. Do your research before you jump into something. Something as simple as like purple beans. We partnered and got purple beans, and we didn't do our research on purple beans. And guess what? When you cook them, if you don't cook them the right way, they lose their purple. So that really cool purple bean you promoted is now a green bean. And it's like, well, what's up? What's so special about this? So that and doing your math, I've learned that partnering with farmers who've never partnered with schools before, they're like, I have no idea how much to plant for you. Can you tell me? And I'm like, I have no idea. So I wish there probably is a really good book somewhere. I just haven't found it yet, or a good resource. But do your math and just know that the farmers don't always have the answers for you. Have a plan B. Like I said, we do a lot of marketing around our different farm to school events, and this just happened. We had Kinder Crisp apples come. Our kids have never had them, got so excited, did all these flyers, and the day before they're like, oh, we don't have Kinder Crisp for you. We have, I don't remember what, we can give you Honey Crisp. I'm like, oh, but it was fine. We just got new materials out really quickly. Another thing is don't assume anything, especially if you partner with master gardeners. And I am not knocking master gardeners at all, but they're a great, great resource. But, you know, people are people, and we found out that they were using Roundup. The one person was using Roundup to do some weed control. And, you know, you just shouldn't assume that those things don't happen unless you get in the gardens and go out to the sites and find a little bit out. We also had an irrigation system for one of our school gardens. I know this isn't farm to school, but it's good to be vigilant because the irrigation system, they said it needed to be fixed. And I looked, and it was coming from a pond off the road that was tiny, and like there were a bunch of geese and ducks swimming in. And I'm like, oh no, this is not good. So, you know, just don't assume anything and do your research. And those are my tips.
Thanks so much, Janeen. I think,
Yep.
Carrie, you're on.
Thanks, Janeen. That was awesome. How do I piggyback on that? You were very, very thorough, and I appreciate it. As Janeen said, it's different being in a rural community. I said earlier to a small group that I grew up in St. Paul, and so it was the corner grocery store, and it was the 10 for $1 canned vegetables. So moving to Rochester was just a real shock to my system. It's very, very rural compared, but we've embraced it. We've been here over 20 years. And I started off working in the large school districts, the Rochester Public Schools, but moved to Eyota about 14 years ago. And one thing, the lesson that I've learned is working in a small rural farming community is farm to school, they kind of expect you to buy local. And so they came to me. I sought out quite a few, but as it grew, they come. And the majority now of what we purchase is actually from Eyota, and our bakery is from a small town just 10 minutes away, St. Charles. And so it's kind of, it's really fun to listen to the farmers of our cattle. And she says she buys her feed local. She uses the local butcher. And so she's very proud that she keeps it 100% local. I want to really, really encourage directors or anyone who is starting a farm to school program not to get wrapped up in the numbers. Don't get wrapped up in how many pounds you're using or anything like that, because it doesn't matter how small your school is. We have 1,100 students, and when I started to partner with our beef producer, it was on the basis that we would just do it on Minnesota Thursdays. And I really didn't think that I was making an impact. And last year when I was talking to her, she was so excited. She said, Carrie, we did the numbers. By you purchasing hamburger patties at the high school and hot dogs at the elementary once a month, you are using one steer. And that's amazing to think that a small school district using it once a month can have that impact. We have a school orchard, and we have 15 trees. And when I talk about kind of the ups and downs, the ag teacher was very excited about doing this. And then he left, and we got another ag teacher who was more into livestock. And so although we got a lot of harvest out of the trees, they were untouched. And she had left, and We had a conversation with the administration. Is it time that we move away from the orchard? And they felt that it was value to the district, and that the next ag teacher, it would be put into the job description. And so we, the trees have been cleaned up. We have a beautiful harvest, and we make homemade applesauce for our kids. We've ordered a sauce maker, and they don't have to peel them. They don't have to core them. And anyone who would like a video on how to make school-made applesauce, just email me. I can send the video to you. We do celebrate Minnesota Thursdays, and I think I can thank Minneapolis Public Schools for starting that. And so we put as much local sourced items on that menu. And one summer I spent my summer going to garage sales and finding bib overalls and turned them into aprons. And so the cooks love to get dressed up in the aprons and their scarves, and the students just love it. I have to say, I am very, very grateful for the state SHIP funding. Without that funding, the orchard wouldn't have come into play. This year, with SHIP funding, I was able to purchase 2 hydroponic growing systems. One is a tower, and the egg class is in the process of putting that together and starting the seedlings, and it will be moved into the cafeteria. And the other is a tabletop hydroponic, and that will be moved from classroom to classroom, K through 12. And so we're really excited about that. In regards, when I first introduced Farm to School and talked about husking corn and whatnot, you know, it kind of got a little bit of pushback, but it didn't take long for them to realize that opening cans takes just as long. And my staff have such a sense of pride, the direction that we're going. They see their work as valued. I've heard many staff say that they now feel like they're part of the learning environment, and they feel that they're treated more professionally. So that said, I just encourage, I'll reach out to any one of us if you need help, and we're here for you.
Thanks, Carrie, and thanks, Janeen. I love, one of the reasons I was excited to have Janeen and Carrie speak is kind of this point about just starting somewhere. It doesn't need to be all or nothing. You don't need to order, 12,000 pounds of produce from a farmer to make it worth their time, and also to kind of get a farm to school program started. So I think those are really important messages. So thanks to you both. So our next 2 speakers, Barb Schank, who you've heard from a little bit already, and Melissa Anderson, are going to share with us a little bit about how farm to school and local purchasing have helped increase participation in their schools. And particularly in Melissa's case, you'll see how it's helped her kind of engage the community and get the community interested and involved in her farm to school program. So Melissa is the food service director at Holdingford Public Schools, and Barb is the director of Nutritional Services at Waconia Public Schools, and also the chair of the SNDM, as you heard earlier. So Melissa, maybe I'll have you start. Go ahead and unmute yourself, and then Barb, feel free to take over when Melissa is done.
Sure. Well, thank you to Good Acre for asking a school well out of the metro to present. I guess Janeen's a little bit further out of the metro than we are, but Holdingford is a town of about 700 people, but we have about 1,000 students. So we definitely draw from a wide area, and most of the kids do not live in town. We've got mostly rural kids. And like the others said, the best way to get into farm to school is just a little at a time. We happen to have a fabulous ag teacher who likes to start small. So when we started with our school garden, it was just a small little patch. It grew by a couple rows a year until pretty soon our ag buildings class was building a high tunnel for us. And then we were borrowing a couple of rows from adjacent farmers to add things like sweet corn and our vining crops. We've got quite a few different things going as far as our garden goes. It's about 1.5 acres now that we use. Corn on the cob, lots of zucchini, lots of pickles. Our kids love our school-made pickles, and a few years ago we decided that we are not purchasing pickles when our school pickles are gone. There's no more pickles until fall. So they've gotten used to eating seasonally just a little bit that way. I'm sure a lot of you who garden found that the butternut squash did fabulous this year. So we've had about 70 to 100 butternut squash that we've been working on. The kids actually like squash, and we've been putting out 2 hot vegetables, and now of course with COVID we have to serve it to them instead of just letting them scoop. And our cooks have been asking, like, would you like peas? Would you like squash? And we have quite a number of kids who've said, can I have both? Well, absolutely. We are not going to tell any child that you can't have both vegetables. So the squash has gone over well that way. And another thing we do with a lot of our garden items is we buy a kind of a generic muffin mix, and then we add zucchini or squash, and then make our own flavors. And with a lot of them, if you throw in a handful of chocolate chips, zucchini chocolate chip sounds really awesome. And a lot of our kids, even if we say zucchini or if we say pumpkin, they'll say, my mom makes those. I really like that. So we've done a lot that way. We've purchased some local items from neighboring farmers. This year we weren't able to do strawberries because we just weren't sure what school was going to be like come fall. We just bought some turnips, onions, carrots. We've gotten some donations. I did not know that pears grew in Minnesota until we had a parent who called and said, my neighbor's pear tree is just bursting. Can you use them? And we're like, well, sure, bring them in, we'll see. And that tree produces every other year. So every second year we get a bunch of pears. This year happened to be our lucky year. But where we've gone next in our farm to school beyond our produce is into meat. And this started as an idea from our FFA alum group. They donated a dozen apple trees to us a few years ago, so we'd already been involved with them a little bit, but Stearns is a big dairy county. And in a dairy county, bull calves have very little value because, of course, you're not going to get any milk from those bull calves. And at some points, it's practically like the farmers can't give them away. And they suggested that why don't we get a bull calf and raise it and then send it to the market for beef. So it would have been like a full year ago. We got a bull calf, sent it home with a student who was a junior at the time, and he grew it for us all year. It was my first time calling the meat market to make a slaughter appointment. And so we sent the cow to St. Joe Meat Market, which is pretty close by to Holdingford, back in May. And then that's the beef that we're using right now in our meals. Right about when COVID hit, probably a lot of you remember hearing things about pigs being so plentiful that people really couldn't give those away either. And we worked really hard to try to find a way to get some of that local pork, and we couldn't get a slaughter appointment. The local meat markets were all canceling those just to keep their retail stores afloat. So we had to put that on hold, but we contracted with the farmer who lives next door to school and lets us kind of cheat onto his irrigation a little bit to grow our corn. And we bought 6 hogs from them, and our ag teacher just hooked up the trailer and the school pickup and pulled those up to Perham on Monday afternoon. And literally minutes before this workshop started, I was on the phone with the meat market in Perham talking about how we could get our 6 hogs into usable product for school meals. And the first thing they asked was, are you getting a half or a whole? I said, no, I'm getting all 6. And they thought that was pretty wild. And so hopefully that'll be something that we'll be able to carry forward. We currently have 2 more calves growing with another family. The FFA student uses that as kind of their project, and we pay for the feed and for the slaughter. But this particular student has 4 younger siblings that go all the way down as far as like 3rd grade. And so even the 3rd grader, when he'll see me at lunch, and then we'll talk about how are my calves doing, and you're talking about how that's going to become part of school meals. And I think it's good education for kids that the animals become our meat. We had talked about just before this started that it's good to talk about it that way. If we were actually able to have the cows out back and the kids could pet them, that might be a different story. We don't want to damage anybody. But I would just encourage people to just look at one little thing that you can get into, and just go from there. And also to apply for grants. I think the Department of Ag person is going to talk about grants. I think we've gotten 3 now from the Department of Ag, and they're great to work with. And thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. That was awesome. I mentioned earlier that I've challenged my teams to ramp up our concepts and our partnerships to improve our local sourcing and our signature entrees. This is Barb Schank, sorry. I don't know how I'm presenting here, but so we've worked with several farmers over the years and gardens, apiarists, and maple syrup harvesters to enhance our meals. So some of the things that we've come across, our goal is to enhance our meals, but also to challenge the exploration of kids for meal concepts and add a little mystery or edge to our menus. We tried some refrigerator pickled beets this year to put on the side of deli sandwiches. We have a nice recipe for bread and butter pickles that we've enhanced over the years, and our kids seem to enjoy those. We are doing our own garden ranch dressing using herbs from local farmers and also from our garden. And a few years ago, we tried a rhubarb ketchup. It was fun that in the spring we had a hamburger day that now coming up, I'd like to incorporate this again to offer kind of a twist on ketchup, just to have kids try something different. Over the years, we've also gotten some really nice Agri farm to school grants where we've purchased a pasta machine. So that allows us a lot of flexibility to create signature entrees like butternut squash ravioli, which uses a flour, egg, cheese, and squash that are local. We tried a new concept this year. Am I on the screen, Anna?
Yes, you're doing great.
Okay, sorry, I can't see myself that way.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, we started, it's a pizza pull apart. We're making our own little bagel bites. And so we're using flour and honey from local farmers. And it's turned into a really fun concept for kids. It's a pull apart pizza that has pepperoni or cheese on top of it. We also are incorporating a breakfast biscuit for our mornings that has carrots, wild rice, wheat, flour, and honey. I kind of mentioned that we had a dream come true, that the farm to school grant from the USDA helped us support, was a big freezer outside of our high school. So we kind of use our high school as a central kitchen, and the freezer is incorporating all the pastas that we're creating in our flour shop is what we're calling it. And our goal is to partner with like a beef cattleman, where we're going to be focusing on the whole animal. Our goal is to of course get ground beef, but then to get roast steaks. Our hope is to get bones so we can roast them to make a bone broth. We would like to capture the suet and make a partnership with our conservation club so that they could render it, incorporate it with seeds, and make it into some like a fundraiser for them to make suet cakes for birds. We're making meatballs. That bone broth ramen noodle bowl has been a really fun concept that we've been using the bones roasting. That's a really fun thing to explore and mean, just personally, I think that there's a good value in it, but the concept of exploding it to a population of 4,000, 4,500 kids is like kind of out of this world. We talk about taking it slow, but at the same time, unless you kind of jump in and force your hand at some things, you don't know what you don't know, and you learn a lot. And so through the process, it's really fun. You have to have an open mind. You have to be ready to be challenged, but at the same time, I guess make changes or modifications and learn from your mistakes or learn from your successes or just learn from previous experiences. We're making some nice lasagnas with our hamburger and flour and cheese. We are making this fall, we're doing a chicken and noodle bowl for our students. I don't have local chicken, but that would be a nice thing to do in the future, but our pasta, of course, is. Some fun a la carte options. We're doing some edible cookie dough with our whole wheat flour, maple syrup. We're making our own in-house cookies, and that's another part of this grant that we bought the giant freezer for, is to make our own cookies and edible cookie dough with local ingredients, and then house it there and then farm it to kitchens so that they can bake it and serve it to students. So our hope was to kind of entice kids to eat more of our meals by the fact that some challenging day of lasagna, it's not everybody's favorite, but if we partnered it with a cookie, that potentially it would sway kids into eating the lasagna and getting the cookie and maybe loving the lasagna and it getting a little more traction that way. We're making pumpkin bars with pumpkin that we raise, and then we partner with the FFA group to get pumpkins. We have an apple orchard as well, a fruit orchard. We also have cherries. Our pears haven't survived, but we have a nice pack of cherries to do something with, but we're making a slab apple pie bars with our apples. I kind of talked a little bit about a fundraising activity, like with the suet cakes with our conservation club, but other groups within our department or within our school district, like athletics or just student found activity groups, can potentially source like cookie dough from us, or edible cookie dough, or assorted pastas, beefs, some of our salad dressings, to potentially do a fundraiser on behalf of themselves. It would be something that we would offer to them to sell on a fundraising basis, that they would pay for our cost. But those are kind of things that we've enhanced our farm to school initiatives with, and try to keep things lively. And I kind of have this motto that drives my staff crazy. It's kind of like, what's next? And so I put it out this year, like, hey, if you guys don't come up with some ideas about what's next, of course it's going to be up to me, and I don't know if anybody wants to hear what that's going to be. But right now there's like a potential of like a little milk system that is housed in a shipping crate that we could get our own raw milk and bottle it. But I don't know that I want to go that far. This whole animal piece is already, it's a lot to bite off. So I think I have to get 2 years under my belt with this project before I can take the next step. But the farm to school grants are great because they help you kind of think beyond, like, if there were no limits, what would you do? And that's kind of how the whole pasta machine came to be. And so her name is Martha, and of course that's offered us a lot of options to incorporate garden produce, local meats, local cheeses, local flours, eggs. It's just been a really fun project, and most kids really, really enjoy and love pastas. So those are our concepts and kind of the momentum that we have here. Once you kind of start it, you don't start big. We started with a little partnership with apples, and then we expanded to wild rice, and then we got a little bit of honey, we got a little bit of maple. And I love Carrie's thought, like, farm to school changes like the weather. It's just, some years is strong and heavy, and some years are kind of light, and depending on what's happening, if you're having a review, you might not want to take on all those challenges, but it's a good challenge, and it definitely adds value to the nutrition program with regard to like pride for staff and just interest on behalf of kids. And then just the talk amongst the teachers and amongst like leaders in our programming. It gives everybody a sense of something kind of unique and something good. Well, that's what we're up to.
I love it. Thanks so much, Barb and Melissa. Yeah, a couple of things stand out to me from from kind of those two stories. One is that farm to school doesn't always have to be produce. I think I often fall into the trap of thinking, you know, because farm to school is usually sort of marketed with like carrots and beets and radishes, which are all wonderful and which all grow here and farmers do a great job. But I just love the idea of buying flour, you know, or milled grain locally. There's cheese, there's, you know, things you can make tomato sauce out of. And then of course the animals, the meat is amazing. And that's a huge agricultural product here in Minnesota. So I love that those stories kind of represent that there's all kinds of ways to do farm to school. And then I also love, Barb, the pull apart pizza, because I think another association we often make with farm to school is that whatever you make with your farm to school things, you're going to have to really talk kids into trying to eat. But like pizza, if that's a locally sourced, locally made item, and in my experience, that's not a hard sell. So very, very cool. All right, well, I think that we'll kind of move into the breakout session portion of the meeting, which I'm really excited for. It's kind of a fancy Zoom move that we're hoping goes really smoothly, but it's Nikki and my first time breaking people up into Zoom breakout rooms. So I think everyone cross your fingers for us. Obviously the pandemic has made gathering in person really difficult. And so I hope that we can all use this time. You can use this time to share with your breakout group, share your stories, learn what others are doing. Remember that none of us are alone in this work. There will be a point person in each of your groups who's kind of going to be responsible for keeping the conversation going. And so we've got a couple of questions that we'll copy and paste in the chat, but also, you know, feel free to have your conversations go in whatever direction feels useful to you. You definitely don't need to stick to our questions. So you'll have about 15 minutes in these breakout groups. We're going to break into 3 groups. So we should have about 15 people in each one. And then a 2-minute kind of countdown timer will show up when we're just about to come back into the main room. And we've got a couple more exciting speakers to hear from. So if for some reason you don't end up in a smaller breakout room, or you get kicked into the main room, or you leave the meeting and need to come back, we can get you reassigned to a group if need be. So I think with that, we'll flip the switch and enjoy this time to chat with your peers, and we'll see you in 15 minutes. Welcome back. We did it successfully. Hopefully nobody got lost. All right, I think we're good here. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you all got a chance to ask some questions and process with your colleagues about kind of the state of farm to school and local purchasing in your district, or sort of how things are going, some opportunities and some challenges. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce our next 2 guests working at the state level, who are here today to share their perspectives on what farm to school means for education and agriculture in Minnesota. So we have Commissioner of Education Mary Catherine Ricker and Assistant Commissioner of Agriculture Patrice Bailey. And I'll introduce both of them, and then I'll pass the Zoom microphone over to them, as I know they're eager to speak with all of you. So our first speaker, a native of Hibbing, Minnesota, is Mary Catherine Ricker. And Commissioner Ricker is a national board certified middle school English teacher. She's been in the schools with over a decade of classroom experience. She's taught in classrooms from St. Paul to St. Cloud to South Korea to Yemen. And she previously served as Executive Vice President of the American Federation of Teachers and as the President of the St. Paul Federation of Teachers. And Commissioner Ricker also has two children of her own. And then Patrice Bailey is also here, and Bailey serves as an assistant commissioner with the Minnesota Department of Ag, as I mentioned, overseeing outreach, agricultural marketing and development, dairy and meat inspection, and food and feed safety divisions. His work has focused on bridging underrepresented communities of color to various available resources and advocating for them at the Minnesota State Capitol. So I'll let Commissioner Ricker begin, and then Commissioner Bailey, feel free to take over when she is finished.
Awesome, thank you. And I am just really thrilled to be here with Assistant Commissioner Bailey as well. We cross paths on Twitter most frequently, and he is so great about keeping me posted on so much of the great work at the Department of Ag. And quite frankly, I have to say, I am really excited to be on with some of my colleagues who you work with regularly from the Department of Education. Yes. Because they are phenomenal, and they really help make sure I understand how I can be an effective advocate for all of you. And quite frankly, just the opportunity to listen over this last hour or so tells me that like this group does not lack for ambition or for creativity. And so I just want to figure out, like, again, what do I do in my position to help harness that, to help make sure that I am working alongside the Department of Agriculture, working alongside you to break down any of the barriers you are still finding to continue to build out all of the incredible work you are doing. And I want to thank Anna and the team at Good Acre for hosting this forum, for letting me be an active listener and champion of your work. And I also have to say, just a very, very sincere, deliberate thank you, recognizing where we are right now in this pandemic on behalf of all of us at the Department of Education and our student and school communities. Thank you so much for your service, for your dedication to meeting the nutritional and, quite frankly, in the ways you are doing it, the social emotional needs of our students in this pandemic, making sure their needs are met. You have, quite frankly, proven how important you are to our schools and our communities as a whole. If any proof was needed, it was the ability of you and your colleagues across the state of Minnesota to stand up meal delivery in 2 days last spring. You got 2 days. I take full responsibility that when on Sunday, March 15th, we said by Wednesday, we would like you to be able to start delivering meals to students. And you did that. You masked up, you stepped up, you pivoted from traditional cafeteria service to contactless delivery. You're doing it now again for those in distance learning models. You're reimagining meal times. I heard it discussed earlier about, as you are supporting students, perhaps in their clustered spaces, reimagining those meal times for students who are back in school or in hybrid situations. You have not just been asked to serve your students, you are serving youth across your communities, being as creative as possible, of course, the summer food program, the farm to school work. I won't stop thanking you for your service. I can't thank you enough. And yes, and it's right, as a mom whose children attended public schools and were served by your peers and the incredibly creative efforts of St. Paul Public Schools Nutrition Services, I know the special attention you pay to your students and your school communities. And I also know the efforts you go through. I just knowing some of the nutrition service leaders in St. Paul taking some of the some meals from across St. Paul's student and family communities and bringing them to scale to suddenly meet the needs of 36,000, 38,000 students on any given day is daunting. It's not just a math problem. I completely understand that. And then just listening to just the creativity and the energy of you, talking recipes and sharing ideas and just being undaunted by that scale of suddenly saying like, yeah, and we serve 1,000 students. Even without this pandemic, your work is commendable. And I want to thank you for your commitment specifically to the Farm to School program. This is an example of how creatively we can embrace one Minnesota in every corner of our state and everything we are doing. That our schools meet the needs of students in various ways, including their nutritional needs. And we have incredible commitments by our farmers in the state of Minnesota. And like that partnership, this program has really shown how it can foster those connections between our schools and local farmers. And those connections produce fresh food and educational opportunities for our students. I mean, this idea of growing this conversation then even into career and technical education programming, right? Our ag teachers, our career and technical education teachers, like really seriously, your creativity knows no bounds. And this past hour has energized me in ways conversations have not had the opportunity to energize me in a while. So thank you so much. As we move forward, I really encourage you to continue to expand those efforts. Share with us, my great colleagues from MDE, share with them so we can hear about those efforts, those commitments you're making to farm fresh meals, as well as nutrition and wellness education. We want to be your amplifiers. We want to help you break down barriers. This work is incredibly important, especially to our historically underserved communities. They have been hit hardest by this pandemic. And we already know that food deserts don't just exist in some of our bigger cities. A food desert can exist in other places. And Farm to School might help break down that situation and create the opportunity for locally raised farm fresh food in front of our students to be shared with youth across communities. And that's going to be the way that we work together to lift up our communities and ensure all students have access to fresh, healthy, and delicious meals. So thank you. Thank you so much for your hard work. It is an absolute privilege. I am humbled to be with you, and it's a privilege to work alongside you. So thanks so much for everything you do. Assistant Commissioner?
Thank you, Commissioner Ricker. That's I can't echo enough of how, how Farm to School is such a game changer, not just in Minnesota, but all over the country. I just want to thank Anna and her team at the Good Acre as well. I especially want to thank Helen Scones from MDA, my colleague as well, for all the great work that she does. This is one of my most favorite programs, because not just because it's Farm to School month for October, but it's a way to connect between students and our local food and our farmers. Of course, Farm to Schools means different things to different people. Some schools purchase apples and carrots and dairy products, and others, deal with wild rice from our local indigenous communities as well, which is really a good thing. I just think about, as Commissioner Ricker talked about, is those food deserts that many of us students from underrepresented communities have to navigate, especially between June 1 and September. That's sort of that food desert within itself pre-COVID. Last year, 600,000 students in Minnesota ate school lunch on a daily basis, making this a great opportunity for the local farmers in the communication that they have. At MDA, we've had these Farm to School rapid response grants to help schools adapt to COVID-19. Of course, it's been kind of crazy with all of that, but we're in the process currently of granting out those 162,000 recipients, and that announcement would actually come out really soon. When I was in the breakout, we was talking about different grants and opportunities, and our first bite and full trade grants just opened up this month. And so just thinking about, that's another $374,000 out there to support Farm to School programs. One thing that I've also enjoyed is our Minnesota Ag in the Classroom, for the virtual tours that they've been doing and promoting Farm to School. So I want to send a big shout out to that, to our staff for doing that. Minnesota Grown also has been emphasizing buying local, as they always do, but especially during October. And definitely we've been participating in the Apple Crunch, which I was at that particular opportunity, which everybody had taken part in earlier this year. And we definitely want to thank the governor for proclaiming October as Farm to School Month in the state of Minnesota. So at this present time, I want to thank all the teachers and all the farm to school advocates on the call, and I want to introduce my esteemed colleague Helen Scones, who will tell you more about our grant MDA Farm to School opportunities. I'll turn it over to Helen.
Thanks so much, Assistant Commissioner Bailey, and everyone. I'm going to share my screen and get something up here to talk about those current funding opportunities we have at MDA. Is this working, Anna?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And if I need to zoom in or something, let me know if it's hard to see. So I'm Helen Schnoes. I am the Farm to School lead at MDA. I am just approaching 1 year in my position, and really excited to be on this call. I was saying yesterday that meeting with Anna and the planning team was my last in-person meeting before we had to all go like into our homes and change our lifestyles and change how we do our work. So it's just it's very lovely to see this come full circle. And I've also seen a lot of names and heard stories here of folks I've heard about as I've been learning the farm to school space in Minnesota, but haven't connected with yet. So really appreciate that opportunity. And also just interesting to hear that Commissioner Ricker was a middle school teacher. My husband is currently teaching Minneapolis public kids middle school English upstairs in our house. So we're all in the midst of this together. But we've also heard really great feedback today about our MDA funding. And so it's just really wonderful to hear that impact that the grants have had over the last several years in helping programs grow and stretch and get some of the added capacity and resources they need. This year, our grants are looking a little different. And that is because we're really excited to roll out a new approach of what farm to school funding could look like. Erin McKee, who's on, was kind of the statewide leader in bringing the cause to the legislature last budget session to say, how can we invest state dollars in incentivizing and reimbursing local procurement? Because once you have the equipment, once you have the plan, you still got to get the product. And so we've seen examples from other states, Oregon and Michigan in particular, who have really grown powerful programs where they're investing public resources at the state level directly to make these local food connections. So we did our rapid response round over the summer just to make sure some farm to school connections weren't going to get lost as you all were doing such amazing adaptation and keeping kids fed. And now we're excited just last week to have launched our kind of full round. We have 2 funding levels available. The first bite is kind of like the starter. If you're just beginning local procurement, we've heard today how much farm to school can look different at any school, how much you don't have to start thinking about big numbers. And so our first bite mini grant is going to be at a funding level of $2,500 to $5,000, no match required. It's essentially like, here's money, go buy apples and do apple crunch. Go kind of do taste tests throughout the year, experiment with new recipes, whatever you want to do to get started is the idea of this grant, making it a low barrier way to kind of advance your farm to school journey. We also know there's some of you on the call who are our farm to school leaders, our champions, and we know that you still are looking to what's next and still want to do more, and we're so excited to be there supporting you in doing that. So our full trade grant is going to start at $2,500, go up to $35,000, and require one-to-one match. And so what we're thinking here is, if we invest a little bit of state money, how can you help us make an even bigger impact? That's a really powerful story we've heard told in other states. The 35,000 max is somewhat based on a proportional scale. So the smaller end the smaller size districts, your funding maximum might be below that 35,000. But we wanted to make sure that with this pilot round of funding, we were going to get a lot of different districts across the state, in our urban communities, in our rural communities, in our suburban communities, experimenting with what it could look like to kind of build on this. So a little clarification on the funding level, but essentially the goal is this is to help you expand and diversify the procurement you're already doing. These grants are open through December 18th, so just under 2 months to put your plan together. The funding, and I should have clarified this, I'm not the grant manager. Lisa Sawyer's our grant manager. I'm more your cheerleader along the way. But Lisa can answer any specific questions, and there's a running Q&A on the grant web pages as well. So everyone has access to the same answers. But these are really looking into 2021 and even into 2022 for the funding. So this is hopefully giving some space for you to talk with Steve at the Good Acre, talk with farmers in your area, and think about what connections you might want to be planning for next year. So Barb was saying she's getting her staff thinking ahead. That's kind of the outlook for this funding round as well. I'm just going to say, please apply. Please make us show that like this is high demand and we couldn't fund it all. And even as we're looking at hard budget situations, there's still a need to like make these connections, because I think the need for resilient supply chains, a strong and robust regional food system is only more apparent now. And as we've talked about, the essential role that good, healthy local meals play in the food security and community resilience across Minnesota. It's like farm to school is just that win-win-win we need in this hardest of times. I'll get off my soapbox, but that's where this event is taking me. So those are open now. Please learn more. I'm in talks with some of our farming groups about how to support farmers learning about this. So it's not only food service, you know, kind of putting it all together, but hopefully it's a welcome sign if farmers are reaching out to you as well, because, you know, farm to school really works when we're all in it together. We also have a small regional hub separate thing that I'm doing just to try to work on our regional technical assistance support. So if anyone has interest in that, you can see the info here, and we're having a webinar tomorrow. That's more aiming at like an organization that works at the regional level. So broader than a single school district or county. I've seen the chat blowing up. If there's anything I need to address immediately, let me know. Otherwise, I think it's time to turn it over to Sammy.
Yeah, mostly just enthusiasm in the chat, Helen, and then I shared the links to those 2 grant pages.
Okay, thank you. And I see Leslie's question. So that is correct. So we are not doing equipment or planning grants this year to fully focus on the reimbursement pilot, and just ask me about in our direct message.
Yeah, so I know there have been some questions coming in about MDA's grant, where it says that schools that operate the National School Lunch Program are eligible to apply. And a lot of you are, of course, this year operating under the Summer Food Service Program. And that's really just a technicality. And so we're working with MDA and to change some of that language so that you are all, as schools, still eligible to apply for that funding. And then I just, yep.
Sorry, Sammy, can I mention one thing? This is Erin. Thinking about that question about the equipment grants and things, if you're interested in making your voices heard about what you think that these grants should encompass, we are going to be having a meeting of stakeholders for the policy effort coming up. And if you're interested, you can definitely email me and I can include you on the list when we set that meeting to come up with what our policy agenda would be for the next session, which starts at the beginning of 2021. I'll put my email in the chat too.
Thanks, Erin. And so actually what I wanted to talk about with some upcoming farm to school training. We would love to continue this conversation and hearing more from all of you as food service directors across the state and how you're implementing farm to school and how maybe you have used an MDA A-GREE grant in the past and now you've expanded, or maybe you're just getting started. So similar to like what Helen mentioned, maybe you're just taking the first bite, or maybe you're serving the full tray local. So look for more information coming in our bulletin and the Farm to School newsletter that we send out as a Farm to School leadership team. But the training right now is scheduled for the first week in December, so November 30th through December 4th. And we're going to be just showcasing an hour each morning, where a half an hour would be spent sharing stories. And then the second half hour would be for dialogue. So you could ask questions of whoever shared the story, share your own story. And it's more of the nuts and bolts of like, how did you do it? How did you write the grant application? Then how did you get the food? How'd you work with your farmer or maybe school garden? So we just would love to continue this conversation. And so some of you, I hope you don't mind, but I'm gonna reach out to you again so we can hopefully share this more broadly and record it and have it as a series to share in the future too. So look for more information coming soon, hopefully next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Sammy. Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Erin, for all of that really useful and timely information. I wish we had time for more questions or more discussion. I know in my breakout session, I don't know about all of you, but we felt like we could have used double the time and had a really rich conversation. So this is good inspiration for maybe conversations to come. But we are running up against 3:30 here, so I will make sure that some of the questions that were asked and resources that were shared get shared in a follow-up email. And then the other thing that I owe to a lot of you is a CEU certificate to show that you were here today and to get those hours counted for you. So Nikki and I will work on that tomorrow, and we'll get those CEU certificates out to you. Thanks, Sharon, for your help with that template. We'll get those out via email, so look for those in your email inbox. I just feel so, the last thing I'll say is I feel really lucky to live in a state where the Department of Education and the Department of Ag are so excited and not just enthusiastic, but obviously putting their money and their resources where their mouth is and where their enthusiasm is. I think that's happening more and more around the country, but I think Minnesota is really a leader in that. So I appreciate you, Assistant Commissioner Bailey and Commissioner Ricker, for being here and sharing kind of your appreciation with us. We appreciate you back. So we're just about done. And as we wrap up, we're going to share a fun video that was put together by the Farm to School leadership team and Farm to School partners across the state. We'll sort of play that as you all leave, but stick around for a few minutes. It's just like 4 or 5 minutes long. So if you want to see a fun video, stick around if you can. And I have to echo what Commissioner Ricker kind of was saying, which is just a huge thank you for being here, for number one, and then but much more importantly for doing the work that you do every day to feed all of the kids and families, students, communities in Minnesota. I've really enjoyed this past hour and a half with you, and I hope that our paths cross again, whether it's in an event like this or kind of doing more on the ground work. So Barb and Carrie, is there anything that either of you want to say just kind of as a wrap up?
I think that you said it all on behalf of us.
Yes.
Just super thankful that we have such great collaborators and the efforts to promote education, student nutrition, and agriculture across Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I totally agree. Thank you, everyone, for your time and energy putting this together, and for all those that, to all those that have attended. Enjoy the video.
All right, here we go. Thanks, everyone.
October is Farm to School Month, a time to appreciate and celebrate the countless connects happening across Minnesota between our children, families, and our communities. And on behalf of the University of Minnesota, I want to thank all of you making valuable contributions with your talent and dedication to help ensure Minnesota students have grow and succeed, from our farmers to food service professionals to program administrators and educators. Thank you.
It's apple crunch time. You know what to do.
Thanks, school nutrition staff. Say thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, farmers. Thank you, school cafeteria staff. Thank you, school nutrition workers. Thank you, school nutrition workers. Thanks, school nutrition professionals, for all that you do.
My name is Uli Kester with the Midwest Food Connection, and I want to thank all the class of teachers who continue to integrate farm-to-school learning into their classroom and online education.
Gloria Vellinga from the Child and Adult Care Food Program, and thank you to sponsors and their staff for serving meals to Minnesota's early care. And now, voila!
Thank you, farmers, for delicious apples and so many other things. And thank you to the great child care providers I work with that do so much to help their kids try new, great local food. Happy Farm to Early Care Month. Apples!
Hi, everybody. This is Jessica and Peter Dazens from Golden Rust Farm. We just wanted to say thank you to the food service departments and schools for purchasing local foods for Minnesota Thursdays, and anytime that they use local foods as a participant in that program, we really appreciate being able to showcase our products in schools and provide healthy, delicious foods to local students. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thanks again for supporting local farmers and Minnesota producers. We greatly appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you for your hard work in serving our children nutritious meals.
Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Welcome to Tracy Area Schools. We are getting our farm to school lovely fresh cantaloupe and watermelon from the Rupert's farm. They bring it to us once a week and they always are so delicious and scrumptious. The kids just really enjoy eating this fresh fruit that they bring us every week. Look how big, nice and round those watermelons are.
We just want to thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for everything, and we just want to thank you, frontline work.
Awesome. All right, that's that. Thanks everybody so much for coming. Take care.